The rain fell in silent sheets that night, tracing down the windows like tears from the sky. Inside a small cafe tucked on a quiet street corner, a woman sat alone, stirring her coffee long after it had gone cold. Her name was Lillian, and her trembling hands told a story her lips never could. A story of rejection, insecurity, and the quiet ache of feeling never enough. Her reflection in the glass was faint, yet she couldn't help but stare at it, not to admire but to measure herself against the impossible standards that had haunted her since she was a child. Her makeup had smudged, her hair was damp from the rain, and her heart, oh her heart, it had just been shattered by another man who couldn't see past appearances. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and real beauty that comes from the heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, because stories like this one remind us that sometimes love finds us when we stop trying to be perfect. Lillian had grown up in a world that prized beauty more than compassion. From her teenage years, she was always the kind one, the good listener, but never the beautiful girl. Her friends dated effortlessly, walked confidently, and she stood in the background, cheering them on while quietly wishing she could be noticed the same way. Years of hearing phrases like, "You'd be so pretty if you lost a little weight," and "You have such a nice personality," had carved invisible scars into her heart. And so, when she finally met Grant, a man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, she almost didn't believe his interest was real. They'd met by chance at a bookstore one Sunday afternoon. She was reaching for a novel on the top shelf when it slipped, and he caught it midair, a scene that felt like it belonged to someone else's romantic movie, not hers. He smiled, said something charming about fate and books choosing people, and for the first time in years she'd blushed. Grant was different, or so she thought. He asked about her favorite authors, listened with genuine interest, and made her laugh in a way that made her forget her insecurities. Weeks turned into months, and for the first time she felt like maybe, just maybe, someone saw her heart before her face. But one evening, everything changed. Lillian had been invited to meet Grant's friends for dinner. She spent the whole day preparing, curling her hair, trying on every outfit she owned, redoing her makeup until her hands shook. When she finally walked into the restaurant, she could feel their eyes, the subtle glances, the polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They were the kind of people who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines, elegant, confident, polished. And in the reflection of the wine glass, she saw herself through their eyes. Ordinary, plain, not what anyone would call beautiful. Later that night, when she overheard one of his friends whisper, "She's not really his type, right?" It was like a dagger slid silently into her chest. She laughed it off at the table, but the words burned long after they'd left the restaurant. The car ride home was quiet, and though Grant tried to hold her hand, she withdrew slightly. That night she stood before her mirror, wiping off her makeup one layer at a time. With each stroke she felt like she was peeling off another mask she had worn just to be accepted. Tears blurred her reflection as she whispered into the empty room, "I'm not beautiful like they are. Not like you hoped I'd be." The next morning she avoided Grant's calls. She didn't want to see pity in his eyes. She didn't want apologies. She wanted to disappear, to protect what little dignity she still had. But Grant didn't give up. He came to her apartment that evening, soaked from the rain, his hair dripping water onto the floor. When she opened the door, her eyes were swollen, her voice weak. She turned away, ashamed for him to see her like that. He stepped closer, quietly, gently. And then, in a voice that trembled with emotion, he said something she would never forget. He told her that when he looked at her, he didn't see imperfections. He saw courage. He saw someone who had spent her life giving light to others, even when no one noticed her own. He said she was beautiful not in the way magazines defined it, but in the way that made people feel safe, seen, and understood. "You're the kind of beautiful that doesn't fade," he said softly. "You're the kind of beautiful people carry with them." For a long time, Lillian couldn't speak. The silence between them was thick with everything unsaid. The years she'd hated herself, the countless moments she'd hidden her smile because someone once called her ordinary. In that moment, She realized that Grant's words weren't flattery, they were truth, a truth she'd needed her whole life to hear. From that day on, things began to shift, not overnight, not magically, but slowly, quietly. Lillian began to look at herself differently. She stopped trying to be what the world demanded and started to embrace who she was. She began painting again, something she'd stopped years ago when she convinced herself no one would care about her art. She started volunteering at a community shelter, helping children express themselves through creativity. The laughter of those children became her therapy, and Grant, he stayed. Not because she changed, but because she finally stopped pretending she needed to. Months passed, and their love deepened in ways she never thought possible. There were no grand gestures, no perfect photos for social media, just small, real moments. Late-night walks in the rain, burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, notes tucked into her sketchbook saying, "You make the world softer." But life, as always, tested them. One afternoon, Lillian was asked to showcase her artwork at a local gallery. It should have been the happiest day of her life, but old insecurities crept back in. Standing in that bright room surrounded by strangers, she overheard a woman murmuring, "I didn't expect the artist to look like her." And just like that, the fragile confidence she'd built began to crack. She excused herself and stepped outside, breathing heavily, the sting of old pain rushing back. Grant found her sitting on a bench, her head bowed. She looked up at him with tears glistening in her eyes and whispered the same words again, words that had haunted her for years. "I know I'm not as beautiful as you hoped." Grant knelt before her, took her trembling hands and smiled through his own tears. "Lillian," he said, "you've never once disappointed me. Do you know what beauty really is? It's when someone's presence makes you believe in goodness again. It's when your laughter makes a hard day feel bearable. It's when your heart chooses kindness, even after it's been broken. That's beauty, and that's you." His words melted something inside her, something cold, something old, something that had been frozen since childhood. She leaned into him, sobbing not from pain but from release. For the first time, she believed him. She truly believed she was enough. From that moment forward, Lillian stopped chasing beauty. Instead, she started creating it, through her art, her compassion, and the way she treated people. Her paintings began to gain attention, not because they were flawless, but because they carried emotion, truth, and raw humanity. One of her most famous pieces, titled Enough, depicted a woman standing in front of a cracked mirror, smiling despite the broken reflection. It touched hearts across the community, inspiring many who had silently carried the same insecurities. Years later, when she looked back on her life with Grant, she realized that love hadn't fixed her insecurities. It had helped her face them. It had given her courage to see herself through a lens of grace. She understood now that beauty wasn't about symmetry or perfection. It was about presence, warmth, and light. There's a certain magic in realizing that you don't have to fit the world's mold to be loved, that sometimes the right person will love you not in spite of your flaws, but because of them. Lillian had found that kind of love, and in doing so, she'd found herself. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories of kindness, healing, and hope to life. Stories that remind us that love is not about perfection, but about acceptance. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below and tell us, do you believe real beauty lives in the heart or in appearance? As the years passed, Lillian's art became her voice to the world, a voice that whispered to others what she'd finally learned, that it's okay to be imperfect, to be different, to be real, because somewhere out there, someone will see your worth even when you can't. Someone will remind you that beauty isn't about being flawless. It's about being fearless enough to be yourself. And every time Lillian stood before a canvas, she painted not just colors, but stories. Stories of healing, acceptance, and love that sees beyond the surface. And perhaps that's what true beauty is. Not something seen with the eyes, but felt with the soul.